And I work with people on leveraging the power of our minds to improve performance.
Everybody, a big thank you to our sponsors, John Traver with Traver Connect, Les Silver at Dynatron Software, Russ Hill at Fixed Ops Marketing, Kaylee Filio with Parts Edge, and of course, Quantum 5. The Fixed Ops Mastermind is powered by Quantum 5. Quantum 5 is the first ever sustainable training technology for automotive. Recent winner of a Brian Pash AWA Award for Innovation and Disruption in the training segment. Reach out today, Dave at quantum5.ai, or you can just go to the website, quantum5.ai, find out more, schedule your introductory call, and do it soon, and still get our NADA 2022 special. All right, let's get into it. All right, everybody, thank you for being with us again. We are thrilled to have with as our guest today, Lauren Johnson, who's a mental performance coach and a speaker. Lauren, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It is great to have you back. You were on the Fixed Ops Mastermind Leaders Group a few months ago, a big success, and I know people are still pulling out some things that you talked about. You talked about your 3-foot rule, I believe it was, that somebody just brought up to me the other day.
I love it.
Yeah. So very cool that things you said impacted people, and months later, they're still pulling them out and using them. So for people who don't know you or who don't know what a mental performance coach is, let us know how you got here and what do you do as a mental performance coach?
Great question. I'll start with what is a mental performance coach. A lot of people don't know the difference between a mental performance coach, a clinical psychologist, a therapist, a life coach. Like they just wrap us all into one, or like a motivational speaker. They just don't know. And it's not anybody's fault. There are so many amazing facets of psychology. And the one I'm a part of is I am not a clinical psychologist. I'm not a psychologist at all, actually. That requires a PhD and clinical hours to be able to gain that licensure. And that is when you can diagnose and treat clinical disorders. And based on your degree, some can also diagnose and treat with medications as well, but that goes with being an MD as well. Now, what I do is I got my master's degree in performance psychology, and I work with people on leveraging the power of our minds to improve performance. And so one of the things I love, Trevor Moawad actually said this, which is you don't have to be sick to get better. And so in my field, people don't just come to me when they're having issues. They're coming to me because they want to sustain the success or the performance that they currently have. And so when I work with people that are having, the best years of their lives, the worst years of their lives, and everything in between. And so we really are working on, it's a really proactive system. Doesn't mean there aren't moments where we have to become and treat things that are more so in a reactive nature, but we are developing more so skills around focus, confidence, leadership, and all of these areas that actually improve our ability to perform when it matters most.
Awesome. Great explanation. Couple of things I want to pull out of there. And first, just for clarity for people to understand, you worked with the New York Yankees previously. So you were working with world-class athletes, right? I just want people to understand like the level of people that you were working with when you say that people are not always there because they're sick or have a problem, that they just want to get better. So these are people who arguably are at the top, right? Yes. And they're still trying to get better.
That's right.
And that's one of the things that I wanted to pull out of that was that I think sometimes people get that stigma about having a coach. Like, what do I need a coach for? I'm good at doing this. I'm good at my job. I'm good at XYZ. Why would I need a coach? And it's really about getting incremental increases in things, right? Becoming better, finding new ways to do things.
Yeah. And with the experience I've had in studying high performers, there are three things that I noticed are very different about high performers. Number one is they don't feel sorry for themselves. They don't play the victim card. Number two, they know they're always under construction. They know that and my friend Justin Sua says this, they're never too good to get better. And number three, they try to develop relationships with other high performers who don't feel sorry for themselves and are constantly trying to get better at that level, because they understand that you become the average of who you surround yourself with. And so when I've worked with the New York Yankees, and I just want to explain, there were 6 of us total in the mental conditioning department. I worked under 2 incredible people. And that's how valuable the Yankees saw this idea of proactive and continuous work. It was to have enough people that could work and touch every part of that system. And not just from a player perspective, but also from a staff and leadership perspective as well.
Yeah, that is an amazing thing, and it's great to see. I wish more organizations looked at it that way. It certainly is something that most organizations, their teams could benefit from. Right? Is at least having some sort of coaching available to them.
Absolutely.
And so you mentioned also that they're looking to leverage the power of their mind. So how powerful is somebody's mind? I don't think most people go deep enough to understand, like, I mean, you have the ability to construct these memories in your head about things that maybe never even happened. Right?
Absolutely. Right. We've all been there before. Where like, we something hasn't even happened and we're suffering as though it did.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always say this, everybody's like, oh, mindset is everything. Mindset is everything. No, mindset is not everything. It impacts everything. That's the important distinction, is because you can have a kick-ass mindset, but if you don't have the skill set with it, then doesn't mean you're going to make the major league team. Like, you know what I mean? So it is not everything, but it impacts everything. And so all those things that are equally important to performance become enhanced when we can match it with a powerful mindset. We can match it with the powerful skills that help us to leverage what we know, the way our brain works, the way our psychology, biology, and neurology all interact. If we can take that information and leverage it so that we can increase the level of performance more often than not, what it won't do is it doesn't mean you're invincible. It will make you adaptable. And what we know is the highest performers, they are not those that don't fail. They're not those that don't make mistakes. They're not those that don't beat up on themselves or feel unconfident. They are those that are willing to adapt and are able to adapt the quickest, regardless of circumstance.
That's interesting. So the adaptability, which is what has allowed the human race to become to where it is, right? We had to adapt to a lot of changing things and continue to change. So what do you find? What do you find that they have that allows them to accept that adaptability, that they need to change, that most people resist, right? Most people are very resistant to wanting to change anything in their lives, even if there's some hard evidence that it's going to provide great benefits to them. So what is it that they possess or that they work on that allows them to accept that they have to continually change?
Well, I think that if you've had any degree of success, there is something that you understand, that while failure is temporary, so is success. And so it's not, Tiger Woods said this is one of my favorite quotes. He said, anyone could be good for a week, could be good for a month, for a year, but can you be good for a decade? Can you be good for a decade plus? Now that's what truly separates what is great. And so it's not just about having success, it's your ability to sustain it. Can you sustain success? Now that's where greatness lies. Because I always say good results are not always the result of good things. You can have good results and do everything wrong, right? Luck plays a role, like outside circumstances play a role, but bad results are also not always the result of bad things. And so when we think about results, and we all get stuck on this, myself as well, is that sometimes we think that results means we are improving. A good results mean we are improving, but results alone won't make you better. Executing the right things will. And so high performers understand they're in the pursuit of executing what's right, not focusing on being right, but finding what's right. And it's that continuous curiosity that I think separates them. They're able to separate the ego and dive into the curiosity of improvement.
Yeah, that's powerful. They're you just said they want to find what's right, not be right. And that little word ego is a pretty large word though, right? It's very hard to separate that from what you do every day and that inner self-talk that you have. I'm an alcoholic. I've been sober for a little over 5 years, and I got to tell you, ego plays a massive role in that. And it was when I was actively drinking, it was all about being right, and not necessarily doing the right things. I just had to be right, and to be able to take your ego out of play is difficult, right? That inner voice is strong, and it's always there. It's not like you can get in a room with someone you don't like and walk away from them. That voice goes with you.
It does. It's so true. And you know what? It's one of those battles you have to consistently fight, because it's as similar as, building a muscle in the gym. If you stop going, you're not going to develop strength. And so it's same with your mind, that it's a battle. You have to go to battle every time it shows up. It doesn't mean you always win.
Right.
And I want to make that very clear. I think sometimes people think, mental toughness and all of this is just always being perfect, never succumbing to these feelings or these pressures or these mistakes. And that's just not true. It's being able to process in a way, it's being able to look at your reality and process it in a way that allows you to maintain performance. And so I always say that mental toughness, it often has to do with accepting your reality in front of you and then choosing your response. And that acceptance piece is often the toughest part.
So it's more about progress than perfection, right? It's not. If you chase perfection, you will always be chasing perfection, because nobody will ever reach that level. So if we truly have everything that we need to succeed within ourselves, which I believe that probably 99.9% of the world does, what is it that we have to do to be able to access that and be able to pull that out of ourselves? And for people who are struggling to find their way, if you will, what are some of the steps that they can go through to start to access what's already in them to be able to find and achieve some success?
Number one is you have to define what success is. We all have a different definition of success. And man, isn't that like a beautiful thing? And so it's understanding, what is success to you? For some people, it's being a good father, being a good mother. For others, it's, winning an Olympic gold medal. For some, it's making their high school varsity team. For others, it's getting that promotion or hitting that, sales goal that you set for yourself. So my first question would be, how would you define success? We can't decide what to do until we've developed clarity on what's most important to you and what matters. And then we can build a routine around what matters. But it can't come without clarity. And a lot of times we feel stuck, not because we don't know what matters, but we don't take the time to define it. And so sit with yourself, take a moment and just sit and ask yourself, what really matters? What do I value? How would I define success in this life? If I am on my deathbed and I look back, how would I define success? What would be the things that I wish I would have done or that I would regret if I didn't do? Because as you start to develop a vision around that, then we can decide what's next, but not before that. And so for some of my, athletes and executives that I work with, that definition is different. And you can have multiple definitions. You can have a personal definition. You can have a work definition. You can have a performance definition. You can have a home definition. And so as you do that, then we can start to develop routines around it. And sometimes the vision can be very overwhelming. So once you start to define these things, you may have a page worth of things. And you're like, holy crap, like now what? Thanks a lot, Lauren. Now I'm more confused than before. And there was a story I heard, and I thought it illustrated this next point so beautifully. And it was a story in a book called The Boy, the Horse, the Fox, and the Mole. And the boy and the horse were walking through the forest. And the boy looks up at the horse and says, I can't see a way through. Like, it's just all forest. Like, I can't see, the light at the end of the tunnel per se. Mm-hmm. And the horse looks down and he says, can you see your next step? And he looks up and he says, yes. And the horse replies, then just take that. And so sometimes looking at the overall vision can be overwhelming in terms of taking action. And when we're feeling overwhelmed, sometimes, I don't know if you've ever in that position where you have so much to do and you just take a nap instead. You know what I mean? Like, you don't do anything because you have so much on your plate, you just like freeze. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when I go through this vision exercise with people, that's how they feel. Now I feel like I have so much to do that we just don't take action at all. And I would encourage you to just decide, what is one small thing you can do today that will get you closer into the direction that you're headed? And just take that.
That's awesome. So it's funny when you said that you've had so much to do that you just take a nap instead. My son, who's about to turn 16, his room becomes a pit in an hour. And you can tell him to clean it, but unless you go in and actually start and help him a little bit, it's just so overwhelming that he doesn't even know where to start. And so that's what you'll do, is you'll find him taking a nap on his bed instead of cleaning the room. And that's kind of what you're describing, right? That's the room is hypothetically your mind. And you need to have that first thing to get going so that you can clean up the rest of it. What would you say is the hardest part to getting somebody to that point where they will take that first step?
It's a great question. Oftentimes people believe they have to feel a certain way to take action, like it's a prerequisite. And oftentimes the question I ask them is, what do they want? Like, what do you really want behind the clarity and the vision we create? There is something you want that's associated with it. For instance, at my Elite by Choice event this past November, there was this amazing young lady, and she was asked, what do you want? And she's like, I want to learn how to develop a session with a client. And the speaker asked again, what do you want? And he kept asking her this, and he kept asking her this, and it brought her to tears. And she finally said, I want to be confident in my ability to help others. And so we got to the core of what it is that she really wanted. And sometimes our visions are so surface that they're not very motivating. And now, granted, motivation is not everything. Okay.
No.
You do not have to feel motivated to do. You can feel unmotivated and still take action.
Yes.
But one of the things we know about our psychology is that you cannot underestimate the power of somebody with a purpose. And there is a indirect level of energy that is associated when you can identify what that is. And so the purpose behind it, I remember, I'll give you another example of this. I was talking with actually another woman. I was doing a talk for a team, and she was like, all right, Lauren, I understand all of this. She goes, but I've implemented some of these strategies. For instance, she goes, I want to lose weight. I want to get in better shape so I can play longer with my children. I just don't have energy. And I know it's associated to like my physical health. And I said, okay. I said, why do you want it? And she kept saying, like, I want to lose weight. I want to feel good about myself. I want, da, 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 da. And I said, what was the first thing that you said? What was the reason behind it? And she's like, I want to have more energy for my kids. And I was like, that's where we got to go. Your why has to do with your ability to become a better mother for your son. Your why has been too shallow this whole time. Because at 5 a.m., when that alarm goes off and you got to work out before you go to work, I'm like, how unmotivating is it to be like, well, I want to look good in a size 2. I'm like, at some point, you're just like, screw that. I'll get to that another day. But if you say, I'm doing this because of my son, I'm doing this for my son.
Yep.
Tell me you don't jump right out of bed. If your why isn't big enough, you will stand still. And so if you don't know what that is, that's okay. And just understand your why can change. Your purpose can change.
Right.
You can have multiple versions of them. Sometimes it might be just to get through this damn week. For whatever reason that is. But what is the reason why you want what you want? There is a reason behind it. Who is it impacting? Why would it benefit you, or why would it benefit others? And as you really dive into asking those deeper questions, you'll begin to connect to this part of your brain that is actually directly correlated and directly responsible for the choices that you make.
Yeah. And having that why, like you talked about motivation, and motivation is fleeting, right? You can go to, nothing against Tony Robbins. I think he's amazing and does amazing work, but you can go to that event that he has for 2 days and you can come out with your heart going 150 beats a minute and you are super motivated. You got to go home and be alone. Right. So that motivation, you have to have a way to transfer that into actual action. And you do that through your why, right? You have to have that deeper meaning. One of the things that I always did with my teams was building out their vision, so that their vision was so massive that it would contain the visions, or be big enough to contain the visions of everybody on their team. Right. So now everybody can achieve their why by trying to achieve the why of the organization. Yeah. And really only through having that why, having that burning desire, are you going to move and do something other than short-term motivation.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. And you know what? I think of it like this. Motivation is like, I heard this analogy. Motivation is like a power plant. A power plant doesn't have energy, it generates it. And so when we think about our motivation, a lot of times it comes after we start taking action, because nothing is more motivating than watching ourselves make progress. That's why going to the gym sucks 90% of the time. But when you're done with it, you are so motivated. For me, I call that like my keystone habit, because it is the thing that holds together all my other good habits. When I work out, I eat better. I have more energy. I'm more confident in myself. I sleep better. And so it's that catalyst for all these other positive things in my life. And so I know like there is a lot of reasons why I work out, but one of them has to do with how it makes me feel, and how I feel and how I think about myself can impact the rest of the quality of my day. And so there's a lot of reasons behind it, but I totally agree with you. I just think that, a lot of times I don't feel like it. And so while it's important, like motivation's great, it's important to become disciplined. And discipline is one of those skills that you do it not because you want to, but because you know what you want's on the other side of it. And if you have that skill, it becomes really hard to not show up for yourself.
Yeah. That's a really good thought there. That discipline is, and discipline seems like such a word people would like to avoid, right? That it seems like the hard thing to do. But with having discipline, you do get to go through those doors to find the things that you want, and get to your why, right? Because you have to be disciplined to stay active enough to spend the time with your children, if that's what your why is. You do have to be disciplined enough to be the first one into work, to make sure everything's ready for the day, so your team can perform. That is what is the best way to develop discipline? I don't think it's necessarily something that's innate in everybody. I think there's a lot of people that I would consider myself a pretty undisciplined person. And because of that, I have processes in my life to try and achieve things. And I still need to get way, way better at that. But yeah. What is it that you think, or what can people do to start building that discipline muscle, if you would?
Yeah, great question. Well, to begin, none of us are born with discipline. Okay. If you think about how the human brain is built, it is wired for comfort. We have this default setting that defaults to comfort. And so discipline is the opposite of that in many cases, where it would be comfortable to sleep in. It would be comfortable to not go to the gym. It would be comfortable to eat donuts and In-N-Out all day. And I say that because I had that the other day because I'm pregnant. It's very top of mind for me. And I wish I could do that every day. But that is the comfort setting. That's default. So in order to upgrade our defaults, number one, we have to be intentional. And number two, we have to be repetitive. If you think about how you build any neurocircuitry in your brain, it is through repetition that you build it. So if you think about like a neuron, and I'm going to draw this, my drawings are terrible. I'll explain the drawing for anyone that's listening. But every time you use a neural pathway, it gets stronger. So I just essentially just kept drawing the same exact line on top of each other. And now it's getting thicker and thicker. So it gets stronger and stronger. And so if you have a strong neural connection right now, okay, let's just say every time you get tired and you're supposed to go to the gym, you don't. You totally take off and you give yourself a break and you just don't do it. By the way, this is not to say that you don't take breaks every once in a while. Okay. Don't come after me. That's not what I'm saying. Okay. But if if that is the pathway that has been built in as a response to feeling tired when you need to do something, it's going to be very easy for your brain to take that neural pathway because it's the strongest. So in order to create a new one, you have to start a new pathway. And so I want you to think about this, this stage. Okay. When we think about the stages of learning, there's 4 stages. You start with unconscious incompetence, meaning that you don't know what you don't know. Okay. This is like you're going down this path and you just feel stuck. Okay. This is a lot of times when people come to me, they feel very stuck. Then number 2 is conscious incompetence. Now we understand that there is something and a skill and a gap of knowledge we need to enhance. So this could be my response to feeling tired. Okay. Now I understand this. Number 3 is practicing it and executing that skill time and time again. And I want you to understand, when you start this, it will feel uncomfortable. It will require a ton of effort at the beginning. And then you move from that. That's that third stage is conscious competence. So now we are aware, but it takes all of that effort to do it. This is when we are practicing, we're building that neural connection, we continue to make those decisions. And then there's the fourth one, and it is unconscious competence. This is when we've developed mastery. You don't even have to think about it to do it. Your brain defaults to that skill because you've developed a strong connection, a strong neural pathway, and a strong response. And so there are these stages, but you can't change anything you're not aware of. So it first starts with awareness. Then we have to decide what is that thing that we need to do. Then we have to repeat it. And then it becomes automatic. And there are now I could dive into a million skills to support each level of this, but that is just an overall overarching theme of this is how we move in the stages of learning.
So as you were talking about that, I was picturing the stages, and I was picturing someone learning to drive. And again, I go back to my son who's about to be 16, and I let him drive in the backyard. I've got a big field, so I let him drive the Jeep in the field. And that's kind of what you go through when you're learning to drive, right? You don't know what you don't know. You don't know whether that's the brake or the gas or what those things do when you touch them. And as you go on, now those of us who have driven a long time are at that mastery stage, right? Where you find yourself at times, you've driven to the store and you're like, oh, I barely remember leaving the driveway.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it. Where you get to the point where you've done something so many times, you don't even have to think. Your brain can focus on other things while it directs you to do the thing you've always done.
Yeah.
So that is exactly what it is. So it takes that level. And the toughest thing for people to do is to repeat. Because if you think about this, like think about the stats with making New Year's resolutions. There's this exactly. You're laughing because again, and I laughed when I read this too, because I'm like, oh, number 1, I've been there myself. But number 2, we've all seen it. We've all seen it. The gyms are packed,
yep.
January 1 until about the 3rd week. And the 3rd week is where the stat goes down dramatically, where people stop showing up. People just give up on their goals. And so the biggest challenge isn't developing a goal. It's remaining consistent. And a lot of times we rely on this thing called willpower. Willpower is a depleting resource. So every day, we'll just take this cup, for example. Every day, I have this much willpower. And depending on my day, there are things that poke holes in my bottle that drain it. For one, every decision you make drains your willpower. Number 2, maybe like your boss yells at you. Maybe, you get kicked in the teeth during a game. Whatever it is, these things begin to drain it. And by the end of the day, we have very little willpower. And if you've made a lot of decisions that day, you have even less. And then let's add in, you've had to deal with some adversity or something went wrong, and you had to exert a lot of energy and willpower towards it. It's even less. So now if you have to make a decision, it becomes that much harder, because what are you going to rely on when you can't rely on your willpower? That's a problem I often try and help solve with my clients, because we have to think about what could happen. And then what the hell are we going to do if it does? We don't think about that. We just think about what we want to have happen. And then we go out there and we try to make it happen. But the fact is, when your goals meet reality, they're going to need to be adjusted.
Right.
And so if we can begin those adjustments before, we can start to develop competence around adversity, around obstacles, around not feeling like it. Because when we develop competence, we actually increase our confidence. So one of the ways that we can do this is to design an environment in a way that helps us, makes it harder to not execute the task than it is to ignore it. And so one way we can do this, and a great reference for this is James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. Phenomenal read if you haven't read it. One of the things he talks about is, again, designing your environment, where a good rule of thumb is making habits so difficult to ignore, but so easy that you can't ignore it. So for example, I like to read every single day. Now, there are days I don't want to read. I'm exhausted. So when I make my bed in the morning, I put my book on my pillow. So at night, which is the time I read, it's harder for me to ignore than to do it because I physically have to pick up my book and put it to the side for me to ignore it. Another example of this is, let's say you need to wake up really early and you are a habitual snoozer. Okay. One way to do this is to set your alarm and put your phone across the room. It is easier to get out of bed to turn off the alarm than it is to stay in bed and listen to that horrific sound. And so as you kind of develop this in your environment and you design it in a way that actually requires less willpower to do it, meaning there's less effort required, there's less decisions that have to be made, the more likely you are to go through with it. And the last piece of that I will say is that we oftentimes focus on intensity. Like, if I can't go to the gym for an hour, then I ain't going. I would rather you focus on consistency than intensity. Yeah. So again, I'll take my book example. Some days when I don't want to freaking read, but I also don't want to ignore the fact that this is the thing I committed to. Instead of reading for 20 minutes, which is my goal every single night, I try and read one page. Yeah. And if that seems daunting, I'll read one paragraph. And if that's even like, I can't even focus on these 2 sentences, I read one sentence. The fact is, I'm maintaining consistency all the while lowering intensity. Yeah. So then the next day when I have the ability to up my intensity, I can. But I didn't neglect my habit because I didn't feel like it. I just lowered it for that day because that's what I needed to maintain it. And so number 1 is designing your environment. And number 2 is adjusting intensity so that you can remain consistent.
Yeah, that adjusting the intensity is it makes me think of the people who are trying to stay in shape or get in shape or whatever. And they go along for 2 weeks and they're doing really good. And they've gone to the gym 6 days a week for those 2 weeks and they've been eating well. And then somebody brings them in the donuts in the office, right? And they eat a donut. And then they're like, oh, I screwed the whole thing up. And then instead of just getting back into it, now at lunch, they're eating crap. And at supper, they ate crap. And now everything is gone, right? Rather than just dialing the intensity back a little bit and saying, okay, that I didn't eat healthy for 3 meals a day like I planned to, but I'm going to do it for 2.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then because the next day, dial it back up.
Exactly. Because we create habits in the opposite direction. And so the making a mistake isn't having a donut is not the problem. Choosing not to get back on track is. And so I actually had a good example of this with one of my pitchers at the Yankees. He struggled to get back if he gave up a home run. Like it messed with him so bad. It took him like 5 innings to get back, which is half the game. Like more than half the game. So it took him so long to get back. And so the first thing that we did was like, okay, if it takes you, so for right now, if it takes you a whole day to get back to eating healthy, see if you can do it in 2 meals. See if you can do it in 1 snack. See if you can do it right after the mistake that you made. Same with my pitcher. All right. So right now it's 5 innings. Let's see if we can do it in 4. All right. You did that. Let's see if we can do it in 3. And so we can also just dial back and have the goal of making less of a negative impact than we were previously making before and really incrementally bringing that in.
Very cool. That's awesome. So one of the things that you talked about when you first started going down this road was decisions and that how decisions are are breaking down your willpower through the day. I know was it Steve Jobs that always wore the same clothes every day? So he said that was one less decision he had to make. How important is it to try and limit some decisions that you make? Because there are a ton of, when I was running dealerships, one of the things we did was looked at how many decisions a customer had to make just from pulling off of the street to get into our service drive. Right. And it was like 11 decisions that they had to make, from which door to pull up to just simple little things. But it was 11 decisions that they made before they even get in the door. How important is it to try and systematize or reduce down the amount of needless decisions that you make in a day?
If you look at any degree of success, you'll find systems that support it. And so if you look at and study professional athletes, you'll notice many of them have routines and systems in place to prepare them for a game. Mm-hmm. You'll also notice that they have systems and routines to maintain their performance in a game. You'll also notice they have systems and routines to get back from a mistake they made in a game. And so the reason why they're so impactful is because it takes away your requirement to make a decision in the moment. Because typically in the moment when the decision needs to be made, it's associated with emotions. Not all the time.
Yep.
Sometimes, right? And often when those emotions are in place, and maybe you feel panicked, you feel frustrated, maybe you feel embarrassed, that we don't always make the best decisions. The best decisions are often made when we can separate our emotions from the decision itself. Mm-hmm. And when we take kind of that like third party perspective from the situation that we're in. And so one of the things I like to say is that the best decisions are made before the decision has to be. And so one of the ways to make and enhance our decision-making is to go through that before it actually needs to be made. The reason why, and I'll give you an example of how you can do this for yourself. There's this thing that I like to use with a lot of performers, and it's a kind of a two-pronged approach. And it's, number one is mental contrasting. So let's say you have like a big meeting you need to go to, a big pitch you're pitching, or you have a huge game, okay, the World Series, we'll just say that. What you want to do is you want to sit with yourself, and when you want to go through, like, what is the goal of this? Like, what do you really want from it? What do you want to have happen? And then you want to sit with yourself and think through and contrast that with what could go wrong. What could get in the way of you executing that thing that you want? And so a lot of people say like, oh, but that's just negative thinking. You shouldn't think about that. No, hold on. You're right. Not all negative thinking is productive, right? Like just being negative for the sake of being negative is not productive. Mm-hmm. But choosing to forecast what may happen and how you might respond to it if it does is productive. It's like looking at a construction sign on the freeway and being able to figure out your alternate route. It's beneficial to think through what could happen or what might be ahead of us.
Okay.
So we can reroute if it happens. And so you work through this mental contrasting. Okay, what you want to have happen, then you contrast it with what could go wrong, what obstacles could get in the way. Okay, and this could be something like making an error. This could be something like, throwing the wrong pitch, or this could be, something like, your first baseman didn't make the catch, whatever it is. You go through all these scenarios. Then you go to and you use implementation intentions. And this looks like going, okay, if my first baseman doesn't make the catch, then this is what I'm going to do about it. Then this is the behavior that I wish to follow. What this does is it creates a link in your brain between a situation and the behavior you want to follow it. So it's saying, if this happens, okay, it's not saying how to avoid it. Okay, it's not saying how to avoid my first baseman. No, it's not what I'm saying. I want you to face it. This happened. then what are you going to do about it? Then what are you going to respond to? Because as you increase your competence around the situation and around things that could go wrong, you increase your confidence and your ability to handle it. And you tend to make better decisions in those moments because your brain no longer has to make a decision under the emotional state you're in. Its only job is to execute. And when I heard this great proverb, and it said, it explains confidence so well. And it's confidence is like a bird landing on a branch. A bird doesn't land on a branch because of its confidence in the branch, but in its confidence and its ability to fly. And so this helps us with our ability to fly, our ability to know and make the right decision if and when something goes wrong. And so that is one way to help increase our ability to make the right decisions if we're fearful or if something gets in the way, because oftentimes it's the biggest mistake we make with goal setting is we don't work through how we're going to handle obstacles if and when they arise.
Yeah, I think Ray Dalio used to say it's another one of those, right? So you already know what it is. We've already covered this. We've already done it. It's another one of those. So this is what we do.
Yep.
That's awesome. Lauren, thank you so much for being with us. This was amazing. And I know a lot of value is going to be taken from this. What is the best way for people to reach out to you and connect with you and hire you as their coach?
Amazing. So the best way to get a hold of me is actually through my website. On my website, which is laurenjohnsonandco.com. And that's all spelled out, Lauren Johnson, ANDCO.com.
Okay.
All of my social media handles are attached to that, and mine are all different. So that is the place to go if you're looking to go on my Instagram, my LinkedIn, all of that, it's just, trust me. And on there, you can sign up for my newsletter. You can check out my event that is coming up in May, and it's Elite by Choice for professionals. This is professionals of all kinds, where I'm bringing together some of the best minds in performance and we're going to come together and teach all sorts of professionals how to not only enhance your own mental skills, but how to impact those that you lead as well.
That's awesome. I saw the list that you had at the last event, and it's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, I am very lucky to be so connected with some incredible people, and they connect me with their incredible people. So I am bringing my circle to you. So anyway, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be amazing, but you can check that out. And then on there also, there is a contact form if you are interested in working together as well.
Awesome. We will make sure all that is linked up into the show notes. Again, thank you so much for being with us. It's awesome always chatting with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate it.